Ifeoma Nwachukwu had one rule for her final year of university. Stay away from Daniel Okonjo. For 3 years, that rule had been easy to follow. He was in the business faculty. She was in engineering. He came from money. Old money. A father who sat on the boards of 3 companies and a surname that opened doors before he even knocked. She came from nothing. A widow's daughter from Enugu who had survived university only because of a scholarship that covered her tuition and almost nothing else. For 3 years, their paths had crossed only in competition. Best student in their year, a title they had traded back and forth like a slap across the face. Top of the dean's list, her, then him, then her again. The university's most prestigious innovation award, she had won it in 2nd year. He had won it in 3rd. Neither of them had let the other forget it. They were not friends. They were not enemies in the dramatic sense. They were something colder. Something that had calcified over 3 years into pure, efficient dislike. So when Ifeoma opened the email from the university housing office on a Tuesday morning in her final year, she expected good news. She had applied for the postgraduate research scholarship accommodation, a rare, fully funded apartment reserved for only 2 students in the entire university, awarded based on academic merit alone. She had earned it. She knew she had earned it. She opened the email and read the first line. Asterisk, congratulations. You have been selected for the Vice-Chancellor's Research Scholars Residency. Asterisk. She smiled. She kept reading. Asterisk, you will be sharing apartment 4B with your fellow scholar, Mr. Daniel Okonjo. Asterisk. The smile disappeared from her face entirely. She read it again. She read it a 3rd time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something else. They did not. Somewhere across campus, at that exact moment, Daniel Okonjo was reading the same email. And for the first time in 3 years of cold, careful rivalry, neither of them knew what to do with what came next. Stay with me. Because what started as the worst news of both their lives was about to become something neither of them saw coming. To understand how much Ifeoma hated this news, you had to understand how the rivalry started. It began in their first week of university, in a mandatory engineering orientation seminar. The lecturer had asked a question about structural load distribution, a question meant to be difficult, meant to weed out the unprepared. Ifeoma had answered it correctly, confidently, in front of 200 new students. The lecturer had been impressed. And then, from the back of the room, a voice had said, actually, that's only half the answer. You forgot to account for dynamic load variance. Every head turned. Daniel Okonjo stood there, hands in his pockets, completely unbothered by the 200 eyes now on him. He was right. She had forgotten the dynamic load variance. The lecturer nodded, impressed by him too. Ifeoma had sat down, her face burning, and decided in that exact moment that she despised this boy with the expensive watch and the unbothered confidence. She had no idea then that the feeling would last 3 years. It only got worse from there. Every assignment became a competition. Every exam result was compared, dissected, whispered about in hallways. Did you hear? Okonjo beat Nwachukwu by 2 points this time. No, I heard she's ahead again this semester. They never spoke about it directly to each other. They simply existed in a permanent, silent contest that the entire engineering faculty had come to find entertaining. Their styles were different and that made the rivalry sharper. Ifeoma worked like she was fighting for her life, because in many ways, she was. Every semester she did not perform meant a scholarship renewal she could not guarantee. Every assignment carried the weight of a mother back in Enugu who had sold her late husband's land just to afford the first year's miscellaneous fees. Daniel worked like every problem was a puzzle he found mildly entertaining. He never seemed stressed. He never seemed to need to try particularly hard, and that, more than anything, infuriated Ifeoma. It felt unfair. It felt like he had been given everything and she had been given nothing, and yet here they were, neck and neck, and he didn't even seem to care about the race the way she did. She had decided, somewhere in 2nd year, that his calm was its own kind of arrogance. She had never asked him if that was true. She had simply decided it. The worst moment between them happened in their third year. The University Innovation Showcase. The biggest event of the academic calendar. Industry leaders, investors, and alumni attended every year, and winning meant internship offers, scholarships, sometimes job placements straight out of school. Ifeoma had spent 4 months developing a low-cost water filtration system designed for rural communities without access to clean water. She had built it using materials she could barely afford, working in the engineering lab until security kicked her out most nights. She believed in that project with her whole chest. Daniel's project that year was a smart inventory management system for small businesses, clean, polished, clearly backed by resources she did not have. He won. She came second. She remembered standing at the back of the auditorium afterward, fighting tears, when she overheard 2 final-year students talking near the refreshment table. Of course Okonjo won. His father probably knows someone on the judging panel. Nwachukwu's project was actually more impactful though. Hers could change lives in actual villages. His is just software for shop owners. Doesn't matter. Money always wins. Ifeoma had not said anything to Daniel that night. But something in her had hardened permanently. She decided he had not really earned that win. She never gave him the chance to tell her otherwise. What Ifeoma did not know, what she had never once asked, because asking would have meant breaking the wall she'd built, was that Daniel had specifically requested his father not get involved with the judging panel that year. He had heard the rumors too. He had spent weeks afterward trying to find a way to bring it up to her, to clear the air, and had failed every time because the moment he got close, her expression would close like a door. So he had stopped trying. And the wall between them had simply stood there, undisturbed, for 2 more years. Now, in their final year, that wall was about to be tested in the worst possible way. Apartment 4B was small but comfortable, one of only 6 such apartments on campus reserved exclusively for the university's top research scholars. 2 bedrooms. A shared kitchen. A shared sitting room. Full scholarship coverage, including a generous monthly stipend that neither of them could afford to walk away from. For Ifeoma, the stipend was not optional. It was the difference between completing her final year research project with proper equipment or limping through it with borrowed materials, like she had done every year before. For Daniel, though he did not need the money the way she did, the residency came with something else he wanted badly. Lab access. Equipment. A research mentor from the engineering department who only worked with residency scholars. He had been trying to get into this program for 2 years. Neither of them could simply withdraw. They were both trapped by the very thing they had each worked years to earn. Ifeoma marched to the housing office that same afternoon, the printed email crumpled slightly in her hand. "There has to be a mistake," she said to the woman behind the desk. The woman, a tired administrator named Mrs. Bello, did not even look up from her screen. "No mistake. 2 scholars were selected this year. You and Mr. Okonjo. Can I request a different apartment? A single room somewhere else? The residency only comes as a unit, my dear. 2 scholars, 1 apartment. That's how it's structured. If you don't want it, we have a waiting list of 14 other students who would take your spot immediately." Ifeoma's jaw tightened. 14 other students who needed it exactly as badly as she did. She thought about her mother. About the land that had already been sold. About the stipend that would cover her final research costs and the small amount she sent home every month. She had no real choice. "Fine," she said tightly. "I'll take it." She walked out of that office feeling like she had just agreed to live in a war zone. Daniel arrived at the same office 20 minutes later, calm as always. "Is there flexibility in the room assignments?" he asked Mrs. Bello. "Perhaps a different scholar pairing?" "The pairing was set by the faculty based on academic merit ranking," Mrs. Bello said. "You and Miss Nwachukwu were ranked 1 and 2 this year. The program always pairs the top 2. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I see," he said. He did not argue further. Because some small, stubborn part of him, a part he didn't examine too closely, was not entirely unhappy about the news. He told himself it was simply curiosity. He was lying to himself, but it would take him a while to admit that. The day they moved into apartment 4B was, by mutual unspoken agreement, the most awkward day either of them had experienced in years. Ifeoma arrived first with 2 bags and a small box of books. The apartment was simple but cleaned: 2 modest bedrooms, a kitchen with basic appliances, a sitting room with 1 couch and a small television. She was unpacking her books onto a shelf in the sitting room when the door opened and Daniel walked in with 1 suitcase and a laptop bag. They stood there, looking at each other, in the apartment they were now required to share for the rest of the academic year. "Nwachukwu," he said evenly. "Okonjo," she said, just as evenly. Neither of them moved. "I'll take the room on the left," he said finally, gesturing. "Fine. We should probably set some ground rules," he said. "Since we're going to be living together." "We are not living together," she said sharply. "We are sharing a space because the university forced us to. There's a difference." He raised an eyebrow slightly. "All right. We should probably set some ground rules since we're sharing a space." She glared at him but didn't argue the correction. "Fine," she said. "Rule 1. We don't talk unless necessary." "Agreed," he said. "Rule 2. We split the chores evenly. I'm not living in mess, and I assume you're not either." She hesitated, slightly thrown that he hadn't argued. "Fine. Agreed. Rule 3, he said. We keep our research separate. No looking at each other's work, no borrowing ideas, no advantage taking." She looked at him sharply. "Are you implying I would steal your work?" "I'm implying we're rivals who are about to share a kitchen," he said calmly. "I'm simply being thorough." She crossed her arms. "Fine. Agreed." "Good," he said. He picked up his suitcase and walked toward his room. He paused at the door. "For what it's worth," he said, not turning around, "I didn't request this pairing either." "I didn't think you did," she said. He nodded once and disappeared into his room. Ifeoma stood alone in the sitting room, surrounded by boxes, and let out a long breath. 1 year, she told herself. 1 year and then I never have to see him again. She had no idea how wrong that thought would turn out to be. The first month was exactly as cold as both of them expected. They moved around each other like 2 magnets with the same charge, close, but never quite touching, always maintaining careful distance. She cooked her meals and ate in her room. He did the same. They split chores through a written schedule taped to the refrigerator, communicated through short notes when necessary, and avoided eye contact in the narrow kitchen when their schedules accidentally overlapped. It was functional. It was also exhausting. The first crack appeared in week 5. Ifeoma came home late from the lab, soaked from an unexpected downpour, carrying a heavy bag of equipment for her water filtration research, the same project from her 3rd year, which she had decided to expand for her final dissertation. She struggled with her keys at the door, her hands full, rain dripping down her face. The door opened from the inside before she could manage it. Daniel stood there. He had clearly heard her struggling. "You're soaked," he said. "Astute observation," she muttered, pushing past him into the apartment. She set her bag down heavily and went to find a towel. When she returned to the sitting room, there was a cup of hot tea sitting on the table. She looked at it. Then at the closed door of his bedroom. She did not say thank you. But she drank the tea. And the next morning, she left a biscuit packet on the counter beside his laptop, where she knew he always sat to work before his morning classes. Neither of them mentioned either gesture. But something had shifted, quietly, by one small degree. The second crack came 2 weeks later. Ifeoma's research equipment, a specialized water testing kit she had spent months saving for, it stopped working 3 days before a critical assessment deadline. She sat in the kitchen at midnight, staring at the broken device, panic rising in her chest. She could not afford a replacement. The university lab equipment was booked solid for the next 4 days. Her entire assessment depended on data she now could not collect. She did not realize she had started crying until Daniel walked into the kitchen for a glass of water and stopped. Nwachukwu? She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. I'm fine. You're clearly not fine. It's not your problem. He looked at the broken equipment on the table. He picked it up, turned it over, examined the wiring with the careful attention of someone who understood machines. This is a calibration issue, he said after a moment. Not a full breakdown. I think I can fix this. She looked up sharply. Why would you help me? He looked at her steadily. Because you're drowning and I know how to swim. That's not a complicated equation. We're rivals. We're roommates who happen to also be rivals, he said. Those aren't mutually exclusive states. He sat down at the table and reached for a small toolkit from his room. Hand me that screwdriver. She hesitated. Then she handed it to him. They worked together in silence for 40 minutes. He fixed the calibration issue with quiet precision. She watched his hands work, surprised by the carefulness in them, nothing like the casual arrogance she had built her image of him around for 3 years. When the device finally hummed back to life, she let out a breath of pure relief. Thank you, she said quietly. The words felt strange in her mouth, directed at him. You're welcome, he said. He stood, gathered his tools, and paused at the kitchen doorway. For what it's worth, your project. The water filtration system. It's good work, Nwachukwu. Genuinely good. She blinked, caught off guard. You've seen it? I asked around after the showcase in 3rd year, he said. I wanted to know what I was actually competing against. He shrugged slightly. It humbled me more than I let on. He walked to his room before she could respond. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time after he left, looking at the now working equipment, and felt something she did not expect. Confusion. Because the version of Daniel Okonjo she had built in her head for 3 years did not match the man who had just spent 40 minutes fixing her equipment at midnight and complimenting her work without being asked. Slowly, carefully, things began to change. Not dramatically. Not all at once. In small moments that neither of them announced or acknowledged out loud. They began eating dinner at the same time, not because either suggested it, but because it simply started happening, and then it kept happening, until it became the unspoken shape of their evenings. They talked while cooking. Small things at first. Why engineering? He asked one evening, watching her stir a pot of stew. Because I wanted to build things that mattered, she said. Real things. Things that could fix real problems for people who don't have access to solutions. Like the water filtration system. Like that, she said. My village didn't have clean water growing up. People walked 2 hours for it. Some got sick from what was available closer. I watched my grandmother get sick from contaminated water when I was 12. She paused, stirring slowly. I decided I would fix that, someday, if I ever got the chance to learn how. Daniel was quiet for a moment. I didn't know that. Why would you? She said. We've never actually talked in 3 years. That's fair, he admitted. Why business and engineering both? She asked, turning the question back on him. My father wanted me in business, he said. Pure business. Boards, mergers, the family company trajectory. I did engineering because I actually love it. The dual degree was my compromise. Do what he wants. Also do what I want. Is that why you never seem stressed? She asked. Because none of this actually matters to your future? You have the company waiting either way? He looked at her, and for the first time, something flickered across his face that wasn't calm. Is that what you've thought this whole time? He said. That none of this matters to me? She faltered slightly. Doesn't it? Nwachukwu. He set down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables. I have spent 3 years trying to prove to my father that I'm not just a name on a board seat. That I can actually build something, design something, earn something on merit. The company is the easiest path available to me. I have spent my whole university experience trying not to take it. He looked at her steadily. You think I don't try hard because I make it look easy? I make it look easy because falling apart in front of people has never been an option available to me. Not the way it might be for you. The kitchen was quiet. Iphioma stood there, stirring slowly, reconsidering 3 years of assumptions in the space of 30 seconds. I'm sorry, she said finally. I didn't know that. You never asked, he said. Not bitterly. Just honestly. Neither did you, she said. About me. I'm asking now, he said. She looked at him. So am I, she said. It was the beginning of something neither of them had a name for yet. It was a rainy night in November when the topic neither of them had touched in 2 years finally surfaced. They were sitting on the small couch in the sitting room, both working on separate laptops, the silence between them comfortable now in a way it had never been before. Can I ask you something? Iphioma said, not looking up from her screen. Always. The Innovation Showcase. 3rd year. Did your father influence the judging panel? Daniel closed his laptop slowly. No, he said. I want you to know I asked him explicitly not to. I told him if he touched that competition in any way, I would withdraw entirely. Iphioma looked at him. Then why did you win? Because the panel thought my project had stronger commercial scalability, he said honestly. Not because it was more important. Yours had more humanitarian impact. Mine was simply easier to monetize quickly, and the panel that year was weighted toward investor interest. He paused. I tried to tell you that, after. You wouldn't look at me for 2 weeks. She remembered. She remembered avoiding him deliberately, nursing a wound she had decided was his fault. I heard people saying your father knew someone on the panel, she said quietly. I believed it because it was easier than believing I had simply lost on the merits that year. I know, he said. I figured that out eventually. I stopped trying to correct it because every time I got close, you shut the conversation down. She looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. I built an entire version of you in my head and never gave you the chance to prove it wrong. I let you, he said. I could have pushed harder to clear it up. I didn't, because some part of me thought maintaining the rivalry was simpler than whatever this might have become instead. And now, she asked quietly. He looked at her for a long moment. Now I don't think simple is what I want anymore, he said. The air between them changed. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then Iphioma closed her laptop too. I don't hate you, she said. It came out quiet. Almost a confession. I know, he said. I haven't hated you in a long time either. Since when? Since the night I fixed your equipment and you said thank you like the word physically hurt you to say, he said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. She laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her. That's not when I stopped, he added. That's just when I noticed I already had. She studied his face in the lamplight. 3 years of rivalry sat between them, but for the first time, it felt like something they had survived together rather than something that separated them. This is complicated, she said. Extremely, he agreed. We graduate in 8 months. I'm aware. I don't know what this is, she admitted. Neither do I, he said. But I'd like to find out. If you would. She looked at him for a long moment. Okay, she said softly. Let's find out. What followed was not dramatic. It was quiet. Gradual. The kind of falling that happens in small moments rather than grand gestures. It was him waking up early to make her coffee before her morning lab sessions, learning exactly how she liked it without ever being told twice. It was her leaving notes on his research papers, not corrections, just small encouragements, this argument is strong, or you should expand this point, it's good. It was long nights in the kitchen, working on separate projects but somehow always ending up talking about everything except those projects. It was him showing up outside her lab with food on the nights she forgot to eat, never making a comment about it, just leaving it where she would find it. It was her noticing, for the first time, that his calm was not arrogance. It was armor. The same kind of armor she had built for herself, just constructed from different materials. 3 months after that rainy November conversation, they were no longer just roommates. They were no longer just rivals. They had become something neither of them had a clean word for, but both of them felt completely, undeniably. He kissed her for the first time on a Tuesday evening in February, in the kitchen, while she was laughing at something he'd said about his disastrous attempt at cooking jollof rice. It was not planned. It was not dramatic. It simply happened, the way the most real things often do, quietly, in an ordinary moment, between two people who had stopped pretending a long time before either of them admitted it out loud. She did not pull away. When it ended, she looked at him and said, 3 years of hating you, and this is where we end up. I never hated you, he said. I think I was always a little afraid of you. Afraid of me? You were the only person who ever made me feel like I had to actually earn something, he said. Everyone else just assumed I would succeed because of my name. You made me prove it. I think I fell for that before I understood what was happening. She smiled and pulled him back toward her. Good, she said. Keep proving it. Word travels fast in a university, especially about two people who had built a 3-year reputation as bitter academic rivals. By March, the engineering faculty had noticed the change. They started arriving to classes together. They sat next to each other in the library. The cold distance that had defined them for years had visibly thawed into something warmer. Not everyone was happy about it. Daniel's father, Chief Okonjo, found out through a mutual family friend whose daughter also attended the university. He called Daniel directly. I hear you're involved with a scholarship student, he said, no preamble. Her name is Ifeoma, Daniel said evenly. And yes. Daniel. You understand what's expected of you. The company, the family name, the connections we've built. Papa, Daniel said firmly. I love her. I'm not asking your permission. I'm informing you. There was a long silence on the line. You barely know this girl, his father said. I've known her for 3 years, Daniel said. I've just spent the last several months actually paying attention. His father exhaled audibly. We will discuss this when you come home for the holidays. We can discuss it, Daniel said. But nothing about my answer is going to change. He hung up and sat with the weight of that conversation for a long time. Ifeoma's challenge was different but equally heavy. Her mother called one evening, worry clear in her voice. Ifeoma. I heard you are seeing the Okonjo boy. The rich one. Mama, his name is Daniel. That family is not like us, Ifeoma. What happens when his people look at you and see only the scholarship girl? What happens when they decide you are not enough? Ifeoma felt the old fear rise, the fear she had carried since her first week of university, the fear that had partly fueled 3 years of fierce, defensive competition. Mama, she said quietly. I have spent my whole life proving I am enough. In school, in scholarships, in everything. I'm not going to start being afraid of proving it in love too. Her mother was quiet for a moment. You sound certain, she said finally. I am, Ifeoma said. And she realized, saying it out loud, that she truly was. Daniel brought Ifeoma home for the Christmas holidays, against his father's quiet disapproval and his mother's careful, watching silence. The Okonjo family home in Ikoyi was everything Ifeoma had expected and somehow still managed to intimidate her completely. Marble floors. Staff who moved silently through enormous rooms. A dining table that could seat 20. Chief Okonjo studied her across the dinner table with the same careful evaluation he gave business proposals. Tell me about your research, he said. Not warmly. A test disguised as conversation. Ifeoma met his gaze steadily. I'm developing a scalable water filtration system for rural communities. The goal is to manufacture it cheaply enough that local governments and NGOs can deploy it widely without depending on continued international funding. And the commercial viability? There isn't significant commercial profit in it, she said honestly. That's not the point of the project. Chief Okonjo's eyebrow rose slightly. Then why pursue it? Because 3,000 children die every year in this country from water-related illness that this technology could prevent, she said. Some things are worth doing even without commercial return. The table was quiet. Chief Okonjo studied her for a long moment. My son tells me you outranked him academically for 3 years, he said. Most years, yes, she said. He outranked me the others. You're not going to pretend modesty for my benefit. No, sir, she said. I worked very hard for those rankings. I'm not going to diminish that to make anyone comfortable. Something shifted in Chief Okonjo's expression. Something that, on a less guarded man, might have been respect. Daniel, he said, not looking away from Ifeoma. Where did you find this one? She found me, actually, Daniel said, smiling slightly. 3 years ago. In an orientation seminar. She's been finding ways to outdo me ever since. Chief Okonjo almost smiled. It was not full acceptance. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 8 months after the email that had thrown them together, Ifeoma and Daniel stood side by side at their university graduation ceremony. Her water filtration project had won the final year innovation showcase, not Daniel's project this time, though his had placed an impressive second. He had stood and applauded louder than anyone in the auditorium when her name was called. Her mother sat in the audience, having traveled from Enugu for the first time to see her daughter graduate. Beside her, somewhat awkwardly, sat Chief and Mrs. Okonjo, who had insisted on attending and had personally arranged the travel. After the ceremony, the two families met properly for the first time. Ifeoma's mother looked at the Okonjo family with quiet, careful dignity. Thank you for raising a good son, she said simply. Chief Okonjo looked at her, then at Ifeoma, then at his son standing with his arm around her, beaming in a way he had rarely seen. Thank you for raising a daughter who taught him what earning something actually means, he said. The two mothers exchanged a look that needed no translation. The fathers shook hands. Ifeoma looked at Daniel. We did it, she said. We did, he said. 3 years of trying to destroy each other academically, and somehow this is where it led. I wouldn't change any of it, she said. Even the bad parts. Even the part where you called my smart inventory system just software for shop owners behind my back in 3rd year? She laughed, surprised. You heard that? I heard everything, he said. I just never told you it stung until now. I'm sorry, she said, still laughing. I forgive you, he said. Mostly because you're holding my future water filtration patent rights and I need to stay on your good side. She swatted his arm, laughing harder. Around them, the graduation crowd moved and celebrated, full of families and futures beginning. In the middle of it, two former rivals stood together, having built out of forced proximity, broken equipment, and 3 years of misunderstood competition, something neither of them had ever expected to find in apartment 4B. Something real. They were forced into the same small space by a scholarship neither of them could refuse. They expected a year of cold silence and competitive distance. Instead, they found that the person you've spent years trying to outdo might just be the person you were always meant to find. The end.